Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me, let's try that again. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, thank you. All right.
We got them.
This young man doesn't know it, but I'm actually going to interview him. And I've got the questions right
So we've
here.
printed off 3 sets of questions and he's ripped up 2. Oh, there, yeah. Sorry, Anton. I tried.
Sorry. I've just been wanting to do that all day, man, okay? How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you, Chris. Thank you very much for coming here to London, flying all the way across the pond. I understand you do nearly 200 speaking engagements a year.
That doesn't matter. What matters is you guys invited me to be here today. And like a lot of people in this room, I guess everybody in the room knows I spent my entire career in the financial services business as a broker, as an entrepreneur. So this is a business that gets in your blood. And to have been invited to be here today with other people that are pursuing something that they're passionate about is a big deal for me, so thank you guys for having me.
Let's launch into the questions. So, Chris, I wanted to talk about a period of your life, a period of your career, which I think is most instructive to what is a conference of retail traders, individuals who trade their retirement savings, their student savings, whatever it might be. This point in time, from 1987 onwards, was the start of your career in finance, in terms of having your own business.
A lot of people don't know. My first day in business for myself in the OEX pit, trading options in Chicago. My first day in business is October 19th, 1987. Now, some of you guys are too young, but if you Google that, you're gonna find out that was not a good day. The Dow, I think, dropped, 23% that day. That was my first day in business. And I'm standing in the OEX pit with some of the brightest guys in the world, right? Guys who are smarter, better capitalized, more experienced. And I said guys because at this point in time, that's who it was. It was all guys. And that day I made a very, very important decision, and that decision was the business has changed tremendously. Everything had gone, as we call it in Chicago, from off the floor to upstairs, guys trading from the screens, and more institutional business. So I had to make a decision on, are you gonna continue to try and trade your own account, or is there another business that you could go into directly related to your skill set? And fortunately, there was another business, and I just went to work helping other people risk their money.
And so what challenges did you face in setting up your business and trading through that period?
Oh man, I gotta tell you, first of all, I will never forget going to my old bosses at Bear Stearns and explaining, you know, I think I'm gonna leave the firm. I'm gonna start my own company. This is 86. And my guys looked at me and said, are you crazy? They said some other words I can't say in church. But are you gonna start your own firm? What does that mean? You can't do that.
Right.
The point is, I did. The point is, I got a higher price per share for the stock I sold in Bear Stearns to start my own business in 1987 than they got when they had to do that deal with JP Morgan. That's crazy. I mean, you look back and you say, whoa, wait a minute. People were absolutely, totally wiped out. The whole world changed. And I ran into one of my old bosses not too long ago, a guy who told me I was crazy. And you know what he asked me? Are you hiring?
And did you?
No, because I didn't like him then.
Okay. There you go. So the Rich in Gardner Rich, I thought was particularly interesting because it comes from Mark Rich,
Mark
who
Rich,
you
yes,
described as one of the greatest futures traders
Oh man,
in
there's
the
no
world.
doubt about that. I mean,
What were the aspects of his personality
everybody in this business knows the name Mark Rich. If you don't, then you should. Mark was probably one of the, if not the greatest trader of all time.
So
And
not even
now he has
futures,
some discrepancies or some tensions with the SEC and the IRS and the federal government. That doesn't mean he wasn't a great trader.
right?
And I took the name Rich. It just rolled. And I will never forget being a young guy, starting this business in my house. Now, nobody knew this. Opened the doors with $10,000 that I had left after October 19th. Opened the doors, $10,000, and I'm building this little book of business, okay? And one day there's a dispute with a customer. And he didn't like my explanation, so he demands to speak to Mr. Rich.
Did you pick up the other line?
We got it resolved. Mr. Rich wasn't available at the time. Something to do with extradition.
And so what an endorsement that was to put him on the nameplate of your company.
You know, nobody knew that but me. Nobody knew that but me, but I knew that this business, a guy like a Mark Rich could happen.
Sure.
A guy like a Chris Gardner could happen. A guy like everybody in this room, it could happen. But one of the most important things that I think just so incredibly important to me was I always knew that I could be smarter. I always knew I need to know more. I always knew, and to this day, man, I'm a voracious reader. I can't read enough about the things that are of interest to me and things that I feel are important to the world for my view. I can't read enough, and I'm saying all of that to say this. The people that are in this room right now probably have some of that in them. That's why they chose to come to your conference. This whole idea of getting smart quick. My old boss at Bear Stearns, Ace Greenberg, who is probably another legend as a trader and a risk manager, the first 3 words he would say to me every day, get smart quick. So these people here, everybody in here is here for one reason, get smart quick.
So that voracious appetite for knowledge and self-improvement was, it seems, a common thread between the great traders, Mark Rich, your boss. Are there any other traits that you think make a particularly good trader?
Focus, 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 focus. And you're going to have to sacrifice some stuff. I mean, now, I'm just talking about me. I'm not talking about you or anybody in this room. You have to sacrifice some things. And if it's not directly related to what I'm trying to get done right now, I cannot give it any attention. You asked me a moment ago about speaking around the world 200 times a year. My response to you was, I'm here with you right now.
Sure.
People can ask me, where are you going tomorrow? I have no idea. Where were you last week? Don't matter. I am right here, right now in London, England. And you know what? I'm so glad to be here. But I have to say this. I guess last week you guys in London had a different visitor from America, huh? How'd that go?
So you've talked about the American dream and how specifically options trading helped you to achieve that American dream within the context of an institutional organization, within the context of Wall Street, and having the liquidity available to you that you had in those roles in those firms. Now with the retail trading industry opened up, brokerages opening up, so much liquidity being offered to retail traders where there was none so many years ago. Is the American dream still possible through options trading for retail traders?
I think it's not just this whole idea of an American dream, it's more universal. It's a universal dream. It's not an American thing. I mean, I met people in this room just a little while I've been here, standing out in the hallway, from 12, 13 different countries. It's universal. And I think that's very, very important because it also makes you conscious of the fact that, you know what, the people that you're competing with are all over the world. Because of globalization and technology, the people you're ultimately competing with are all over the world. And you can never be too smart. You can never be too smart. I think that's one of the most important things. It also opens up this whole idea of relationships and what we can all learn from each other. And a lot of times it's not about competition, it's about coordination, sharing ideas, sharing information, and trying to help each other get smarter and better. Because when you do that, those people are going to make you sharper and better. That's why I tore up your notes.
Yes. I'm very grateful.
And you're doing fine, aren't you?
I don't know about that. That's
Why you keep looking at that paper?
I'm not. I don't even when you pointed at it. But on the topic of collaboration, I've seen people, looking at spreadsheets, looking at charts, comparing each other's trades, bouncing trade ideas off each other. Would you say that your institutional days, you remember them as a lot of collaboration, a lot of talking with other people, bouncing ideas off, getting on the phone?
I remember all of that, but you know what, most importantly, at some point, somebody's got to make the call. And you go live or die with that call, right? The question is, did you make the best call that you could have made with all the best information that you had at that point in time, and would you make the same decision again? You always want to feel like yes. You never want to feel like, well, maybe I should have, I wish I could have. It's too late. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to make the call. You listen to people, you do your research, you do your analysis. At some point, you got to push the button. And you got to live with that. That goes back to me touching briefly on sacrifice earlier. You got to live with that. You got to own that. I talked about it in my talk earlier, this whole idea. How did I get here? You got to own that. Just like you own that position.
You have to own it the moment you
That's it, you got to own it. Yeah.
So moving back to options, which are of course what you're famous for when it comes to markets. Do you think that the retail trading landscape makes it easier, harder for traders to make money making options? Are they looking at it the right way?
I think nothing is going to be easier for anybody in any facet of our business ever. This is not a business for easy. If you're looking for easy, get a job. Go work for somebody else, right? This is not a business for easy people. This business is going to take everything that you've got at the highest level that you can deliver it at on a continual basis. It's something I call atomic time. Engaged in a passionate pursuit to the nth degree. That's it. And you can't fake it because the markets will not allow you to fake it. You can get put out of business real quick. One trade. But at the same time, as you continue to grow and grow your network of information and grow in your confidence in your skill set and stay in your lane. I think that's important. Stay where you're comfortable. Right. In this particular space, stay where you're comfortable, right? I can't think of anything else I would have rather have done, and I spent my entire career in the business.
So when it comes to careers, people at different stages of our lives, we often say we have, or we meet two different types of retail traders at the Institute. There's the younger guy and the slightly older guy. And so the younger guy quite often is studying or has just gotten out of university, is looking at trading perhaps as a career, looking to trade for themselves, maybe they're self-employed, and they're unsure of where to go in life, but they know they have $20,000. If you could start over again with $20,000, what would you do? And would you like that opportunity?
Man, if I could start all over again. Look, let me answer that question differently. If I could do some things differently.
Sure.
$20,000. With that first $20,000, what I would have done differently, I mentioned earlier, my son going to college for 6 years. You know what that costs?
More than 20.
More than 20. My point is, I should have just given him a check for $20,000 and said, here, go start a business. We would have both been ahead of the game. By a long shot. But to answer your question as directly as possible, if I only had $20,000 to start out with right now, everything that I did every day, always do the same thing. Invest your time before you invest your money. That's why all these people are here at this institute right now. This is an investment in time, and it's very, very important. And don't be in a hurry. I will say that. I think that's something that needs to get talked about or needs to get expressed. You can't be in a hurry in this business. I mean, if you want to make money fast, go to Vegas. All right? I mean, we're talking about building something long-term commitment that generates what could become generational wealth.
Right.
I mean, if that's what we're talking about, that was my objective. Not just making money fast, right? Consistent generation of revenue and cutting losses, walk real fast.
Just getting smarter, faster.
Walk fast and don't look back.
Right. And so for, perhaps the older gentleman or lady who has, been around the block when it comes to trading, made money, lost money, perhaps had a business, had a career, has a 401k that they don't know what to do with, but they're pretty certain that they could do a better job if they put their mind to it and took the time. What would your advice be to that sort of individual in society who was
that
thinking
is
what to do?
why earlier in my talk it was so important for me to point out individuals that started later in life. Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, 56 years old, had some health issues, had maybe what some people would say was a challenged marriage. But he started the company when he was 56. John Pemberton, the guy who created Coca-Cola, you talk about having some difficult times previously. That guy was 58 years old. He was a colonel in the losing side of the Civil War. So he probably knew something about tough times. Again, first year sales, Coca-Cola, 25 bottles. This has been done before. Harlan Sanders, the colonel, started that company, he was 62. It's been done before. Why not you? Why not you? What do they have that you don't have? It can be done.
And so would you advise these people to think of alternate ways of, instead of relying on their pension, relying on themselves?
Well, you got to rely on yourself first. I mean, the cavalry ain't coming. Whatever your situation is, ain't no backup. I mean, that goes back to something we said earlier about owning it, right? You got to rely on you first.
And so you were talking about the number of countries people have come from. I saw someone over there earlier today who came from Sydney. I assume you travel to these places a lot, and you have been traveling over the past year and past few years. What have you learned over the past few years traveling, and how difficult is it to do, and what do you gain from it?
First of all, the travel, the invitations to have spoken in over 80 countries, man, I'm like a one-man United Nations, man, and I love it. I got to tell you, one of the most important things I've learned is that happiness is a global pursuit, and that dreams don't have borders. I mean, people, again, a lot of people in this room right now have a dream and a vision of being and doing and creating something that, frankly, a lot of people probably didn't see them doing, right? A lot of people probably said, you're going to do what? They don't get it. Everybody is not going to see the vision that you have for you. They're not. That goes back to the sacrifice thing. You're going to have to sacrifice some relationships. Everybody's not going to see it. But as far as the opportunity itself, it's been an absolute blessing. And you learn a lot. I mean, and sometimes you get lucky. I got lucky on the 31st of May. I was speaking in Hong Kong. Anybody in here from Hong Kong? China? Okay? And sometimes, and we're in a church here, I can say this in this church, sometimes God just tells me when to shut up. I'm in Hong Kong, and I'm trying to draw similarities between the challenges in the US in the 80s and some of the challenges around the world. I mentioned earlier the economic challenges around the world. And I almost said something about Tiananmen Square in China. Dude, I would not be sitting here right now.
I think you would have gotten away with it.
They would have taken me to the mainland. You would have never heard of me again. But something says, no, maybe there's another example. Okay. So I'm learning stuff too every day.
Fantastic. And so a lot of the audience here are British. They're Londoners, many of them, and many from other countries in the United Kingdom. And do you have any advice for British people?
Yes, I do.
This
I
London
have some
crowd?
very important advice for British people and people all over the world. Do not be taking advice from Americans. We got our own problems, okay? Don't be taking any advice from, I'm not saying anybody's name. Don't take any advice from anybody in America. We got our own issues, challenges, and problems. And I gotta tell you, honestly, I mean, this is just a frank, open discussion. It's a scary time. It's a scary time. Things could be changing soon, we'll see. But it's a scary time. I got to tell you, it's some scary times all over the world right now. And you guys right here, man, y'all got to get this thing worked out.
We're working on it.
Y'all got to get this thing worked out.
It might change when we walk out those doors when it comes to the current political situation. But I think what we could do at this point in time is open this up for questions from the audience. So does anybody have anything they would like to ask
She's
Chris?
got a question right here because she's been writing stuff down all day. So you get the first question.
My name is Miriam. I am from Austria.
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 Yeah.
The country that gave us Schwarzenegger. Thank you.
And actually,
That's right.
I watched a movie of your life 2 days ago because I was like, okay, if Chris Gardner is at this conference here, I have to watch the movie. And after I watched this movie,
Now, this was the first time you saw the film? Mm-hmm. The first time?
Yeah.
So you've been busy. But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was like thinking, okay, how much broad bags can a human bear until he stops fighting? Because in this movie, it seemed like you never stopped until you got it.
Well, I couldn't. I guess your question is, how many setbacks could you endure and keep going forward? Yeah. Let me answer that question this way. Remember, there was a guy in the movie who kept kind of running me around. Chris, go get me some coffee. Chris, go get me a donut. Chris, go move my car. That guy today is one of my best friends.
Right.
And has been for 35 years. And he said to me from the very beginning, I knew that you were going to be the guy. I just had to make sure that you knew it. And as far as not quitting, I don't know how to do that. I've never quit. I don't know how to do that. I got no experience.
That's amazing.
Okay? But I'm always mindful of something my dear friend and mentor, Dr. Maya Angelou, once said to me, was that there are folks who came before all of us who came up a steeper side of this mountain carrying a bigger and a heavier load, but they kept going forward. And you have a responsibility to continue that. So, did I answer your question? Thank you. Next question, anybody?
Anybody else?
Marvin from London, yes.
I just wanted to ask you a question about the idea about being world class. And many of us in here want to be world class at something, if it's not trading, something else. What would be your advice about starting that journey and developing
Becoming world class.
Exactly.
The first thing is you got to make that decision. You got to make that decision. Am I going to be good at it, or pretty good at it, or world class at it? You got to make that decision. Then you got to ask yourself every day, what does it take? What does it take to become world class at this? And you got to be able to stay on it every single day. We talked earlier about focus. Focus was mentioned. Sacrifice. But it starts with that commitment to become world class at it. And again, it needs to be said, everybody's not going to see it but you. The only person that's got to see it is the person that sees that when you're brushing your teeth. Do me a favor. I want you to do this. Here's going to be your homework assignment. Okay? Every day when you brush your teeth, I want you to look at that person in the mirror and ask yourself 2 questions. Remember that scene in the movie where I met the guy in the red Ferrari? And I walk up to him and I say, I got to ask you 2 questions. What do you do and how do you do that? There's a new 2 questions. When you're brushing your teeth, ask yourself, number 1, if I could walk through a door tomorrow morning and be doing anything in the world, what would it be? What would it look like? What would it smell like? What would it taste like? Engage all of your senses, and then ask yourself the second question. What did I do today to make tomorrow happen? Did I move the dial forward 1 notch? Did I take 1 baby step towards what it is I say I want to do? And if the answer is no, then that's not what you really want to do. So you got to brush your teeth all over again. All right, 2 questions. That's all I want from you. I want to hear from you.
Just on that point, within the context of trading, what do the 10,000 repetitions look like? What do the trying and failing and trying every single day, what does that look like for traders? Is that research? Is that knowledge of the world? Is that closing successful trades? What would that entail?
All of that combined with staying in your lane. Just because you can trade one market and you know this one market, it doesn't automatically translate into a different market where there's different dynamics going on that you're not as focused on.
Sure.
And you don't have to think you have to be world class at trading every market or multiple markets. Maybe you just want to master that one. All you need. Mark Rich mastered oil.
That was his specialty.
That was it. Huh? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Instead, coming from Iceland. Pleasure
From where?
to meet you guys.
Iceland, I think.
Iceland.
Iceland, yes.
My brother, yes,
Have you
sir.
been there?
Not yet.
Always welcome.
Oh, actually, I have. You know when I was there? Interesting story. Can I? I was there about 10 years ago. And you guys at this point in time were totally in love with digital stuff and technology. The folks who brought me over to speak was a bank, the biggest bank in Iceland. And I have this little thing I like to do sometimes with people. Let's exchange currencies. All right, just, a couple of dollars here. Just, I want to see what the currency looks like. The president of the bank didn't have any currency. Everything was on his phone. That was 2008. That was the beginning of the global financial crisis.
My question to you is because, like you were talking about Michael Jordan, it's all about visualizations and see the things in head and focusing. So my question to you, because you're the president of the happiness and globalizing the happiness, how do you visualize that and how it's going? How it's going to spread out the happiness in the worldwide, because the world is corrupt and spoiled with politics.
Well, there's no doubt the world is corrupt. I mean, that's why, and I made reference to that earlier, but I also made some decisions that the things that I could control, I would be in total control of. I talked about making the decision to make sure that my children knew who their father was. That was the most important decision I ever made in my life. I could control that. That decision that I made that I was going to become world class at what I did, I could control that. Some of the madness in the world we can't control. You got to be aware of it. You know, you can't, live in a hole. You got to be aware of it. But at the same time, you have to make the decision that you control and be responsible for what you can be.
Hi, good afternoon, Chris. Thank you for your talk. I couldn't help but smirk that Mark Rich founded Glencore, which was a short recommendation earlier today. But apart from that, do you have any book recommendations?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any book recommendations?
Book recommendations.
Something to Mark Rich.
Oh, man. I am reading a book right now. You ever read a book that you know you're going to have to read twice? I'm reading a book right now. I think the title was Globotics. And it's about globalization and robotics and how the world is changing and continues to change so rapidly. And the fact that certain revolutions, industrial revolutions, took a lot of time for the changes to really impact the rest of the world. But in technology, it happens like that. The present is becoming the past as I'm speaking. And the changes that occurred in that first industrial revolution that took some of the manufacturing jobs away from folks, well, that same digital technology is coming to take the jobs of the folks who sit in offices. They got machines now that can do accounting and insurance claims, and in some cases, medical procedures better and quicker than human beings. So my point is, you've always got to be making sure that your skill set is as relevant as possible in this new world. And I'm looking around the room, I see a fair number of guys, see a lot of young people, but I also see some folks a little bit younger, a little bit older. Hey man, I don't know what the numbers are where you live, but in the United States, there are over 50 million people who are over 50 years of age who are wondering, will they ever work again in the business that they used to be in? Because of globalization and technology and the global financial crises, 50 million people wondering, will they ever work again? You couple that with something else. I don't know what the numbers are where you live, again, but this whole idea of, like we talked about reading and wanting and knowledge. In America, there are 35 million people who cannot read. And they're not all immigrants. Think about that. 35 million people who cannot read. How do you make an intelligent, informed, independent decision if you cannot read? That's dangerous. A lot of folks are really, really excited about this concept of driverless cars, and they think how cool that's going to be. Oh, driverless cars? Well, guess what? You know what the big corporations are working on? It's not driverless cars, it's driverless trucks. And when they can transport goods and services across America and across Europe and all around the world with no driver, no union, no accidents, and you can run that truck 24 hours a day, that truck driver cannot say somebody took my job. No, your skill set is no longer relevant and it's your fault. Last question right here. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jian Liu. I'm from China, and just want to thank you very much for your speech earlier, Mr. Gardner. Very motivating. So obviously, you've been through several economic cycles already, and my question will be related to macroeconomics. So there is a belief out there right now saying that Fed basically has eliminated economic cycles, and that if there is any sign of recession, the Fed can just cut the rates and restart QE, and everything will be fine. I was wondering what would be your take on this whole this time will be different view, and if you disagree with that, and what would be the indicators for retail traders to monitor?
Let me answer that this way. First of all, I will say, I share the concern that something, I don't want to say a word, a recession. I don't want to say a major economic change, but something feels a little bit unsettling right now for me personally. And I just look back and through the prism or the views of being in America, I look back and I say, like, wait, last year, one of the largest automakers laid off 8% of their workforce. That's 15,000 people lost their job, okay? And the next month, some politician says something and the market drops 200 or 300 points on bad information. And I look at the fact that major portions of the Fortune 500 CEOs, about 60% of them, are all saying, you know what, maybe we need to not be expanding right now. Maybe we need to keep a little more powder dry right now. That's indicating something. I mean, if you're a seismologist and you're looking at the shifting of the plates on the planet, you can't predict how bad something is going to be, but you can't play like you don't see these things. And
particularly if you've been through several cycles before.
Oh, absolutely.
And you might have
absolutely.
seen
And I got to tell you, one of the things that I talk to everybody about, not just people in our business, is you got to be asking yourself, what are you doing right now to prepare yourself for when it happens? It's not going to be if. What are you doing right now to protect and ready yourself for when it happens? You got to be mindful of that, okay? So I want to be in touch with everybody in this room. Yeah. On a continual basis. I want to be in touch with everybody in this room. I'm easy to find. I respond when I can, as quickly as I can. But this whole idea of trying to be and create something special and do something that enriches and helps other people enrich their lives, that's very important to me. So I'm honored to have been here today. It's been an absolute blast. Thank you, guys. God bless, and we'll see you again.
Let's give Chris a great big round of applause.
Thank you. I'll talk to you, baby girl. Thank you, guys. Thank you up there. I'll talk to you all the way up there, baby. Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.